In this video, we are going to talk about square and cube roots. So first, just a couple reminders. Here we have the symbol for square root. When you need to type a square root into Desmos, you're going to click the keyboard button and then the square root. So you click keyboard and then there's the square root button at the bottom. This is the symbol for a cube root. It is like a square root, except there is a little 3 here, and that is called the index. If you need to type cube root into Desmos, you have to click Functions, then Miscellaneous, and then there is an nth root button. You have to type in the index of 3. So if you click Functions, Miscellaneous, nth root, make sure you type 3 for the index, and then use the arrow key to get over so you can type something in the radical. If you need to simplify a square root or a cube root, it is helpful to be familiar with the perfect squares and perfect cubes, and you can create these lists in Desmos. Let me show you how to do that. To get the list of perfect squares, if I type y equals x squared, and then change this into a table, click the gear and then table, and I can hit enter to get some more rows. Here I have my perfect squares, 0, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, and I can keep going. I can do the same thing to find my list of perfect cubes. If I type y equals x cubed and change it into a table, and then I can click enter to get some more rows. These are my perfect cubes, 0, 1, 8, 27, 64, 125, 216, and I can keep going. First, let's take a look at putting radicals in simplest form. A radical is in simplest radical form when there are not any perfect squares, or cubes if we're talking about cube roots, left under the radical. We are going to use Desmos to help us as much as possible with these problems. So first, if there are variables, you need to assign 3, 5, or 7 to each of the variables. If you need more details on this, watch the video for packet H. Then you're going to evaluate the problem in Desmos. You're going to get a decimal answer, write that down. Then you're going to test all of the multiple choice options by typing those into Desmos, and you'll write those answers down. There might be more than one multiple choice answer that gives you the same decimal as the original problem. If that happens, pick the answer with the smallest number inside the radical. Let's take a look at a few examples. First, written in simplest radical form, square root of 24 is equal to which of those choices? So let's go to Desmos. We are going to type in square root of 24. And it's going to give us this decimal. I'm not going to write the whole thing down. I'm just going to write 4.89. Now, I'm going to type all of these answer choices into Desmos to see what decimals I get for those. And I'm going to write down each of these decimals on my paper. Again, I'm not going to write the whole decimal, I'm just going to write the first couple places. So answer choice F gave me 4.89. G gave me 2.82. H gave me 9.79. And J gave me 5.65. So the one that was the same as my original problem is f. So that's our answer. Number 2 is similar. It says, which is equivalent to square root of 50 x squared y to the 7th z to the 8th. So here's where we need to assign 3, 5, and 7 to each of our variables, like we did in packet H. Now, if you remember from the video for packet H, the calculator has some issues when it comes to the letters x and y. I can't say that x equals 3 and y equals 5 because Desmos doesn't like that. So I'm going to change my variables to a, b, and c. So I'm going to rewrite these. So I'm going to use 50 a squared b to the 7th c to the 8th. And then in my answer choices, I'm going to change all of the x's to a's, y's to b's, and z's to c's. So here are my new expressions. So I'm going to go to Desmos, and I'm going to make a equal 3, b equal 5, and c equal 7. So I just type a equals 3, b equals 5, and c equals 7. Now, I'm going to type in my original expression, which is square root of 50 a squared b to the 7th c to the 8th. And it gives me a decimal. So I'm going to write this down. Then I'm going to type each of my answer choices into Desmos as well. So here I have my 4 answer choices. I'm going to go ahead and jot down these numbers. So for answer choice A, answer choice B, answer choice C, and answer choice D. And you'll notice that answer choice D is a little bit different. It's in scientific notation. Don't worry if you don't remember what that is. All we're doing is trying to match the decimals. So you'll notice that answer choice A is the one that matches the decimal from our original problem. So A is our correct answer. Let's take a look at problem number 3. This one is different. It says identify each expression that is in simplest radical form. We mentioned earlier that a radical is in simplest radical form when there are not any perfect squares or perfect cubes under the radical. Since we have square roots in all of these problems, we want to make sure that there are no perfect squares inside each of these square roots. The easiest thing to check for first is the variables. If the variable has an exponent that is 2 or larger, then that means there is a perfect square that can be simplified. For a cube root, you would need something that was an exponent of 3 or larger. So we can tell that the fourth choice is not in simplest radical form because the x has an exponent of 3 and the y has an exponent of 4. Next, we need to look at the numbers. Well, option number 2 doesn't even have any numbers inside the square root. So there are no perfect squares that are numbers that can be simplified. That means that this one is in simplest radical form. If I look at the first option, I have a 50 inside the square root. Here's where that list of perfect squares comes in handy. I'm going to divide 50 by all of the perfect squares that are less than 50 and see if any of them are factors of 50. So if I go to Desmos and just start dividing, 50 divided by the first perfect square was 4. That gives me a decimal, so that's not helpful. 9, 16, 25. When I do 50 divided by 25, I get 2. So that means that we can simplify this radical more. So this is not in simplest radical form. If we look at the third option, the only number inside the square root is 2. Well, if I try and divide 2 by all of the perfect squares that are less than 2, the only one is 1, which we don't really care about when we're simplifying radicals because that's not helpful. So there is no way to simplify the square root of 2. So this one is also in simplest radical form. For number 4, it says, for which value of x does cube root of x simplify to 5 cube root of 7? This is very similar to problems number 1 and 2. I'm going to start by typing 5 cube root of 7 into Desmos. So 5, remember for cube root you go to Functions, Miscellaneous, Nth root. You have to type the 3 and then arrow over to type in a 7. And I'm going to write down this decimal. Now, I want to know cube root of which of these numbers will give me 5 cube root of 7. So I'm going to type cube root of 35, cube root of 245, cube root of 875, and cube root of 1715 into Desmos to see which one gives me 9.56. So after we type in our 4 options, we can go ahead and jot down our decimals. The one that's the same as the decimal we started with is cube root of 875. So that means that C is the correct answer. You will also be asked questions about operations with radicals. This means you could be adding, subtracting, or multiplying square roots or cube roots. If it's a multiple choice problem, you type the problem into Desmos exactly as it's shown, write down the decimal answer you get, type each of the options into Desmos, write down your decimal, and see which one matches the original problem, just like we did with the previous problems. But if we have a problem that is not a multiple choice, then we have to actually do math. If you are asked to add or subtract, remember you have to have the same radicand. So let's pause and talk about what a radicand is. If you have the nth root of a, n is your index, and a is your radicand. So you can only add or subtract radicals when they have the same radicand. So this means that you will have to first simplify the radicals, and then you can add or subtract the coefficients and leave the radicand the same. When you are multiplying square roots or cube roots, you multiply the coefficients together, then you multiply the radicands together, and you simplify if necessary. Remember that a coefficient would be a number in front of the radical. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. For problem number 5, we are asked to place the answers in the correct boxes. We are told that each answer can be used more than once, and we need to complete this statement. We have 4 square root of 2 times 2 square root of 3, and we need to figure out what that equals. Well, in the box above, we were told that we need to multiply the coefficients together. So 4 and 2 are our coefficients. If we multiply those, we get 8. Then we need to multiply the radicands together. The radicands are the numbers inside the square roots, so 2 times 3 is 6. And then we need to see if we can simplify. Like we did on the previous problem, we need to look at our list of perfect squares. I'm going to divide 6 by the square roots less than 6 and see if we get a decimal or not. The only square root less than 6 is 4. So if I go to Desmos and do 6 divided by 4, I get a decimal. That means I cannot simplify square root of 6. So 8 square root of 6 is my final answer. And I put 8 in front of the square root as my coefficient and 6 inside the square root. And that's it. For number 6, we want to simplify this expression. We have 3 square root of 8 plus square root of 32. Since this is a multiple choice problem, we can just go ahead and type this into Desmos. We have 3 square root of 8 plus square root of 32. And we get a decimal. Then we type in each of the answer choices and see which decimal matches. So if I look at my 4 answer choices, I'm going to jot down my decimals. I have 18.97, 26.83, 14.14, and 69.28. The decimal that matches my original problem is answer choice C. So that is our correct answer.